We Are Atheists is a show brought to you by volunteer atheists from FreeThought Fort Wayne Incorporated. We're looking for members of our audience to call in to tell us what they believe and why they believe it. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting group.
Hello, and welcome to We Are Atheists. Here on We Are Atheists, we want to discuss what you believe, but more importantly, we want to discuss why you believe it. Or perhaps you might have some objection to humanism, perhaps, or a question about humanism. Maybe you think atheism is ridiculous. Whatever the case may be, we would like to hear from you. You can call us at 260-422-3902. You can also email your questions to WeAreAtheistsTV@gmail.com. If you're checking us out on Facebook Live, you can also submit a question in the comments section. We Are Atheists will accept callers from both theists and atheists, though admittedly our primary target audience are theists. We really want to discuss the great debate. The isms are really at the focus that we'd like to discuss. We'd like to really get to the foundations of somebody's belief to see if they really do have good, reasonable reasons for believing what they believe. So a great place to start would be introductions. My name is Caleb Tittman. I'm the producer for We Are Atheists, and I'm also a host for the show. I'm really just a Joe Schmo. There's nothing special about me, but we'll discuss my story and why I'm here and how I got here in a little bit. I'd actually like to pass the ball on to John right away to just briefly discuss what exactly, or excuse me, briefly tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm John Loftus. I am an author of books, editor of books. I was a former minister, had a dramatic conversion to Jesus, and I decided I wanted to learn more, so I went to college to study more, and I went to Great Lakes Christian College in Lansing, Michigan. So shout out to my friends in Lansing. And then I graduated from there. I became a youth minister. I went to Kalkaska Church of Christ in Kalkaska, Michigan, and I was there for about 2.5 years as a youth pastor. And then from there, I decided, I wanted more education. So I took some classes at Lincoln Christian College and Seminary in Lincoln, Illinois. And there I earned a master's degree, 2 of them actually, Master of Arts and Master of Divinity. And I wanted to go on to more school. So after taking some ministries here and there, I went on to some school at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, where I studied with people like William Lane Craig and Paul Feinberg and Kenneth Conser, who is the Dean of Evangelicalism and editor of Christianity Today. And then from there, I decided I wanted more school, glutton for punishment. I went to Marquette University, where I was enrolled in a PhD program in theology and ethics. I wanted to learn about everything I could learn, because I was sure that my faith was true. And so I wanted to argue against, the atheist, the very thing I've become.
Is that why you went through all of that? Specifically to discuss this with atheists?
Thanks for the question. I mean, not necessarily, but yes. I just wanted to know more about the faith that I had adopted as a 17-year-old. What is this faith that I've got now? Let's learn more about it. And the Bible, I thought, had all the answers, or at least most of them. It had the general schematic for the answers that I might want to know, and I looked into philosophy and theology and ethics for the answers stemming from the Bible at that. But yeah, I wanted to know more about my faith. But I also, at some point, probably when I was at Lincoln Christian Seminary, where I also wanted to argue, and become a Christian apologist. So I went into more school at Marquette University in the PhD program, and I didn't finish that because of some circumstances that my dad just learned he had cancer, and I needed to get home to him, and I was lacking funds. I mean, you can't just pick up 3 master's degrees on your way to a PhD and expect you're going to get it all done. I was really that naive. Not only naive enough to think that I've got all these answers in this book, this ancient book, but also that I could pick up as many master's degrees on my way to a PhD and think that somehow I would have the energy and the finances and the willpower to finish it. Well, I had run aground, and so then I took a ministry in Angola, Indiana, became a minister there as a senior minister, and long story short, that's my uphill climb.
Well, long story short, what that basically tells me is that should somebody call in 422-3902, please do. You have an exquisite knowledge of the Bible and Scripture, is what you're telling me. Does this include the Apocrypha as well? I'm curious. This is just sheer curiosity.
No, because we Protestants, especially evangelicals, we don't think that was inspired. You see, no, that doesn't count. No, not a bit. I knew a little bit about it, but once you do understand these 400 years that took place between the Old Testament and the New Testament, you realize that there are certain things that the New Testament adopted that were in those that were developed in those years. Like the devil. He didn't exist really as an evil creature too much prior to those 400 years. And angels, they were leftovers from the sons of God type of terminology that we found in the Old Testament that just got reinvented during that time. And hell, we didn't find that doctrine in the Old Testament, but all of a sudden in those 400 years of the apocryphal writings and time period, all of a sudden these ideas developed, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, bang! In the New Testament, you had all kinds of talk about hell and the devil, and angels. Well, that was the kind of stuff that was developed in the 400 years, which wasn't developed in the Old Testament. It's like it's a foreign world. Where'd that come from? And you can't understand those things unless you understand the Apocryphal. That is the scriptures that aren't considered scriptures, but are adopted by the Catholic Church.
Well, I actually like the way that you put that, but I got to be honest. I think Hitchens has you on this one. Hitchens, by the way,
he always has me.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. I'm not offended.
Hitchens is probably the most brilliant person with the English language and the humanist and atheist movements that has ever existed, in my opinion.
Robert Ingersoll, probably. You got to listen to Robert Ingersoll. I mean, I don't know. Put them side by side. They are excellent. Robert Ingersoll. He had the tongue. Died in 1899.
Oh, the silver tongue. Well, one thing that I loved about Christopher Hitchens was just the sheer amount of knowledge that he was able to stuff into his brain and be able to recall it on cue, just on a whim. And he actually put together this book right here. It's called The Portable Atheist. And now, Christopher didn't really write this book. It's really a series of essays and short stories and excerpts, things like that, from atheist and humanist materials throughout history. And Hitchens actually brings up the point that you had, and the way that he phrased it, I love this. He says that in the Old Testament, when you were dead, the earth swallowed you, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. God was done with you. It wasn't until Jesus came along, meek and mild.
Resurrection 2 is another developmental idea. Right.
Yeah, that's it was gentle Jesus, meek and mild, who really instituted this whole idea of fire and brimstone and hell or separation from God in some cases, depending on what you believe. And the way that I loved Hitchens. It's a shame that he's no longer with us. In fact, it wasn't that long ago. It was like 4 or 5 years ago. I know this is silly. I've only been in the atheist and humanist movements myself for about 4 or 5 years now, personally. And Hitchens was a pivotal player in my deconversion. He was huge. I was able to connect with him on a very special level. Same with him and Matt Dillahunty. Those two, the way that they articulated their thoughts, it was like, I've been thinking these forever. I just didn't know how to say it. I didn't know how to put it to words. And so again, I just want to highlight one last time this book right here. I love this book. This is one of my absolute favorites. This is one I brought it to my very first live episode, The Portable Atheist. Could not recommend that book more. It's a quote mine. So let's go ahead and briefly discuss what exactly this show's all about. Now, the intro and when the show had started, I had mentioned that this show is really about a conversation of the Great Debate. When I fell out of my Christianity, my religion, it was a very slow process, but as soon as I'd woken up one day and decided I'm an atheist. When I said it out loud.
Scary thought.
Yeah, it really was. Let's go ahead and talk about that, to be honest with you. I think that'd be an interesting story. The first time I had ever said out loud, I am an atheist, I was sitting on the couch with my wife, whom I knew wasn't religious, wasn't extremely religious, but I knew that she was at least a deist. And I wasn't quite sure how she would feel if I'd come out and just said, I'm an atheist. But I knew that if I was going to tell anybody, she was going to be the one I was going to tell first. And I remember being on the couch in front of her and just staring at her for a couple of minutes, nervous to tell my wife, the person whom I'd married, said I was going to be with through sickness and health, all that. I was still scared to tell even her. But I turned to her and I said, baby, it was totally random, mind you, just out of the blue. I said, baby, I got to say this out loud. I honestly think I'm an atheist. We had a very brief conversation, and to be honest with you, she was extremely supportive. She didn't care. She was like, you know what? I mean, that's good for you. She'd kind of put the pieces together because I've been watching a lot of Atheist Experience, watching a lot of debates, so I think that she figured something like that was coming, but it took a long time for me to get confidence, even hint at the notion that I wasn't religious anymore with my family. I was one of the individuals that played it real close to the chest. I was never out and about with my atheism with my family, especially. And it wasn't until I had joined FreeThought Fort Wayne Incorporated, whom, by the way, is a sponsor of our show, FreeThought Fort Wayne Incorporated. If you'd like some information, please visit our webpage at freethoughtfw.org. And if you'd have any questions about FreeThought Fort Wayne Incorporated, any questions about humanism, please feel free to call. Our number is 260-422-3902. We'd be happy to take your questions. FreeThought Fort Wayne Incorporated, as far as I'm aware, is the only official humanist organization in Fort Wayne. Spare college campus atheists and things like that. So as soon as I discovered that there actually was a humanist organization, which took some time, I actually spent a couple of days trying to find one, and I had to sift through some junk to get there. But once I found it, I thought, okay, maybe I should at least check this out. Let's take a peek. Let's see what's going on behind the curtain. Because I'd only ever heard of humanism. As far as I knew, I hadn't even ever met a humanist, much less an atheist. So I decided to hop on down to the Old Crown Coffee House, which is where they tend to have their Sunday morning meetings at 11 o'clock, and just stepped in and got to know the people and realized right away, this is what I needed to be doing. I needed to be hanging out with these people. Up until that point, my deconversion process was pretty lengthy and honestly a bit convoluted. But up until that point, I'd only ever been hanging out with people who were extremely enthusiastic about their supernatural beliefs. Now, when I say extremely enthusiastic, I mean I went from an extremely evangelist, fundamentalist Christian household. And once I had moved out from all of that, well, let me rephrase, once I had gotten kicked out of the home, maybe a story for another day. Once I'd gotten kicked out of the home, I decided that I was going to do some soul searching. I was living by myself. I had just a trunk full of clothes and a TV to my name in my Chevy Metro, if you can imagine. That's what I moved out with. And I had a lot of time with me, myself, and I. Did a lot of reflecting. And I thought, well, I'm going to really look into this. I'm already kind of on the fence about a lot of the Bible stuff, because to be honest, I was one of those people, even as a child, where I had a difficult time truly believing, swallowing a lot of the crap that's in the Bible. Job and the whale, people turning into pillars of salt, the Great Flood. All of that stuff seems silly to me, even as a child, I will admit. But it was so ingrained into my psyche that I didn't really question. I don't even know if I'm making sense here, but it's like somebody would, for example, my stepmom Peggy, she is very much into this Noah's flood thing. She's got Noah's arks and floods paraphernalia all over the house. She's in love with this stuff. And in fact, I remember getting her little Noah's Ark, what are they called, those little snow globe things, for example, for Christmas gifts and things like that.
Totally lost on her and many others is how many people, if that event took place, which we know it's a myth, how many people had to die, and how much, vegetation even, and animals, and this is a wrathful God. This is an envious, jealous, hateful God that you know, just everybody who didn't climb into the ark is going to die. You know, we were talking about books earlier, and you had mentioned the earlier one. This one, edited by Stephen Wells. We want to get our commercials in too. You know, he did a really great job on the Skeptic Annotated Bible. And you look and you get to see some verses and some things about each verse. And in the back, it's how many people God killed.
I love that.
He killed all kinds of people. You know, he killed more people than Satan, for instance.
Yeah, which, do you know how many that was, by the way?
We don't know. I mean, it
well,
never
according
happened,
to the Bible, I mean,
it never happened. But supposedly it did, and they're supposed to worship this God. You know, God should feel likewise about the whole world by now. I mean, he should just want to do it again. You know, and this is the kind of God that you know, the Westboro Baptist Church loves. You know, God hates fags, you know, and hates everybody else, anybody who's divorced, or God is a hateful God. They will come out and say it, and that's just a ridiculous. That kind of God doesn't exist, and it didn't exist in the Bible either. But I was just commenting on your mom's belief about Noah's Ark.
Yeah, no, and you know, this is what I'm kind of getting at with this whole believe it but don't really believe it thing. And whenever I'd heard somebody say that they were a believer in the flood, I never questioned it. As far as I was concerned, it was to each their own. And honestly, it wasn't until I started watching The Atheist Experience and started learning more about skepticism. Matt Dillahunty had really instituted this idea of skepticism into my brain, which might sound silly, but that's just not something that would ever really come about. Doubt was always something that was shunned for the most part.
Doubt is a virtue. I mean, anybody who says otherwise doesn't understand skepticism. I think that people will say, well, you're just a skeptic. Well, you know what? We all should be skeptics. To every con artist and every used car salesman and everybody who wants to pawn off a new belief or a bizarre attitude. It's just, we should be skeptics. They think that when we say skeptics, that we doubt whether there's a material world or that.
All right, John, I had to cut you off there. We actually have our first caller on the line.
Well, okay,
all right,
I can finish that thought later. But skepticism isn't like that at all. You know, skepticism is just simply having an honest, skeptical attitude towards bizarre claims, and many claims are bizarre. I mean, we just have to be able to bring on the evidence.
Well, hello. I understand that we have Mark on the line, and he's got a question that's relevant to our conversation. Well, in its own way. I understand that you have a question about atheism.
Yes. What is an atheist?
What is an atheist? Well, thank you for the question. That's a good question. Believe it or not, what is an atheist is a pretty common question. In fact, just in the last couple of weeks, marketing for We Are Atheists, putting the word out, one of the most common replies or comments that I would see is, it would vary, but it would range from there's no such thing as an atheist to you know, what even is atheism, to people saying that an atheist, we're just saying that there's no, like, that's our mission, is to declare that there is no God, so forth, etc. These sorts of things. There's a lot of misconceptions, that is to say. Atheism is a position on a single issue, and it's an issue on belief, specifically belief. And this is important because the issue is, do you believe in a God? That's it. If your answer is yes, you are a theist. If your answer is no, you are an atheist. And it's as simple as that. Now again, we're talking about belief. So if you want to go and start having a conversation that involve higher levels of having to define your terms and things like that, you might have to use terms like agnostic or gnostic, or perhaps even things like positive atheism or negative atheism. A positive atheist, capital A atheist, is somebody who is militaristically atheistic. That's somebody who's gonna gonna tell you to your face that there is no God, period. I'm personally not one of these individuals. I'm not going to tell you with certainty that there is no God. My position is I simply don't have a good reason to believe that there is a God.
I don't think anybody is certain. You know, I don't think any atheist who says they're certain is probably misrepresenting the probabilities. I mean, there's always some slim, remote possibility, that there might be a spiritual force somewhere out there. I mean, maybe there are certain atheists, but most all atheists will admit that there's a chance, some kind of, like if you think of a chance in terms of, if nothing else more than this, the movie Dumb and Dumber with Jim Carrey, and when he finds the girl of his dreams, and he says, "Do I have a chance?" And she says, "Not one in a million." And so he turns his head around, and with his teeth, he has one blackened out, I think. He says, "So you're saying I have a chance?" So even an atheist will say, so there is a chance, in the same sense that Jim Carrey could have gotten the girl of his dreams. But and I think that I don't want to be painted in that kind of corner, because Christians paint us in stereotypes all the time for advantage. And so just simply we don't believe in a God is good enough. And we, like you say, we can get into the details, and maybe there are, maybe there aren't some certain atheists. But just for the general audience of atheists, we just simply don't believe that there is a God. That's it. We just don't simply believe. There's not enough evidence for it.
I'm sorry about that. Can you click that? I apologize. I'm going to ask my camera woman here to fix that.
Is that your phone?
That is my phone.
Someone's ringing?
Yeah, we're professionals here on We Are Atheists. This isn't our first show. I have no idea.
We're pinned to the chair with mics and stuff like that. So thank you so much, Marcia. Right? Marcia.
Hey, I'm going to ask my tech in the back if they can check to make sure that our Facebook is still live. That was my phone, and we were actually streaming through our phone to Facebook Live. So if somebody back there could double check that for us.
It looks like we are.
We're good? All right. I am so sorry about that, everybody. But hey, look at that. We got a nice we got a nice break in the conversation, so we can...
Is the caller still on?
I don't believe so. No, we lost the connection. So yeah, I'm seeing here. I'm sorry, we did lose that connection, but
yeah, because now we're talking about Christopher Hitchens' book. That's way back.
Well, I do see that we have some questions on our Facebook Live account. What do you see there?
You want to take?
Yeah, let's take one of the Facebook Live questions.
How do you pronounce his last name?
I would say Wuthrich.
Okay, Val. I see your question. You say what makes?
Actually, I'm sorry. Jumping ahead of ourselves, we actually have another phone call.
Oh, phone calls take precedence.
Yes, I'm sorry. So Val, we will get to you in a moment. We're getting a phone call queued up as we speak. Okay, well, they're still on the line. So what was the question?
Val says, what makes the Abrahamic God the one true God? Nothing.
Yeah. You're calling the wrong show, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's the good. I think he's a skeptic, and he's on my Facebook wall a lot. And yeah, I mean, we assume that it's got to be that God, and that God isn't just one God. All
right. Well, we'll finish that in a moment. All right. I guess we have our second caller. Hello, Val, I guess, actually is calling us. If I'm not mistaken. Oh, I apologize. It's Karen. Karen, you're now on. What's your question? Karen, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, all right. Well, you are on We Are Atheists. What can we do for you?
I want to know from where you get your morality, if not from the Holy Scriptures.
Excellent question. Thank you so much. Yet again, I don't mean to down you or degrade you when I say this, but this is an extremely common question, and to be honest, it does kind of come off a bit rude, a bit demeaning. This is basically to suggest that without a holy book or some sort of divine inspiration, that a person can't be moral. This just simply isn't the case. Where do I get my morality from? Personally, I look towards well-being and harm. These are things which can be, in my opinion, for the most part, objectively measured. Sometimes you have to take in some subjective variables into account. But by and large, we understand that there are certain things that are going to benefit people, and there are certain things that are going to harm people. And then in order to determine what the best course of action is likely to be, I implement a mechanism which is known as the veil of ignorance. The veil of ignorance is a hypothetical thought experiment wherein you're supposed to, in any given situation, Pretend as though you don't know who you're going to be in that situation.
Rawls' theory of justice. That's
Is that what this is called?
Yeah, it is.
I've never heard it referred to as that before.
Oh yeah. It's a key theory in studies on ethics and stuff like that. Rawls came up with this thought experiment that you're mentioning. I'm surprised I thought you were going to bring his name up, but you're supposed to imagine yourself behind a veil prior to being born, as to what you would be, whether you'd be white or black, or or what gender. He may not have mentioned that, but how rich you'd be, where you'd live, and stuff like that. And you're supposed to come up with how you would like to have society prior to knowing who you'll be, how much money you'll have, what color you'll be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the thought experiment, is that what you're headed? Mm-hmm. The thought experiment then is supposed to help us all consider what would be fair for everybody, despite what our present circumstances is. Yeah.
Mm. Karen, are you still on the line? Do we have Karen still on the line? No? I'm sorry. Well, Karen, I hope that we did answer your question. I think we can elaborate a bit more on this. Because morality is one of the most difficult conversations to have.
Well, listen, here's how it works. We know there's no God. I mean, I'm not certain about it, but I'm certain enough to say we know there is no God. There's no evidence of any spiritual reality. You can call in about how we know that. Okay, we can call it. Evolution was quite a surprise to us that that could be discovered. We discovered it. Charles Darwin and others have elaborated on it. And if science can solve that, it can solve other things. And so what we do as atheists was we wait on science to solve those problems rather than say, well, God did it. Right? Mm-hmm. So we're waiting on science to solve those problems. And while we're waiting on those problems to be solved, we're trying to live our lives the way we can. And we don't need a holy book. We've already established, from what we know, that there's no holy book that's going to tell us that God exists. We're not going to believe it based on anecdotal evidence. And so therefore what we have to do now that we don't believe in a God is we have to work out how to live our lives. And what we do when we look at the Bible, we don't find anything in the Bible that is moral. We find nothing in the Bible that's ethical except what people had already discovered on their own. What we find in the Bible is like, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We find that in Confucius. We find that in other places in various ways. So what we have is the Bible kind of like contains ethical advice, which we would have discovered, and we did discover on our own. So all ethical advice is simply discovered on our own anyway, and so we're just continuing that process in society to the best we can. And that's all we can, because we can't continue to let preachers tell us what's moral by condemning birth control, condemning homosexuality, condemning all sorts of things, and sending us to war. That has a proven track record of being bad. So where we get our morality, we get it from the same sources as we've always gotten it from: human thinking and empathy.
Yeah, exactly right. I'd also like to go a step further and speculate. And I'm going to say speculate because I'm no expert in any of the fields that I'm about to bring up. Let me just put that out there. But from what I can gather, there are also certain biological and environmental reasons why we probably and likely do have the morality that we generally do have as a species.
Sure.
There's an entire field of study out there dedicated to altruistic behavior, for example. Altruism being self-sacrifice, in other words, something that is non-zero sum, or excuse me, yes, that's correct, non-zero sum. Something where you might not necessarily benefit yourself, but somebody else would. So there's, on an evolutionary basis, obviously we're a social species. And as such, we are obligated to be able to cooperate. We simply cannot survive red tooth and claw as individuals, by and large, generally speaking.
We need others.
Yes, exactly right. We need each other to scratch each other's backs constantly.
We're tribal people. Human beings are tribal people. And we congregate in tribes. We need our tribe. It also created a lot of wars in the past because we didn't see beyond our borders, and we saw somebody didn't look like us, and so it's time to go to war because they're not like us.
Well,
so as the world gets bigger, our tribe gets bigger, and we learn to care more for more people.
And that's a great point as well. But one of the things that I'd like to briefly discuss, again, I'm no expert on this stuff, but as we evolved as a social species, we started to develop what are called mirror neurons. What this is it's simple enough. We all can understand, even on a primal level, if we had no language. Babies, infants, newborns all understand fire, hot, bad. Okay, they don't have to articulate it. They don't even really have to understand what any of these things are. They don't have to know what fire is, what hot is, etc. Fire, hot, bad. They recoil from harm, is what I'm saying here. And as we develop cognitively, we've developed mirror neurons as part of our evolution. So then, if somebody else happens to touch the fire, hot, bad, we can reciprocate. We can actually have an idea and sympathize with what it's like to be burnt. And you take that simple concept and you apply it to other things, like forced sex bad, right? Nobody wants to have sex forced upon them. And mirror neurons and our biology, the fact that this is something that's going to cause us discomfort, etc., we can empathize on that level. So you can already start to see the primordial foundations.
Stealing from people is bad. You look at the pain. You hurting somebody. Yeah, we see the pain on their faces or the screams, and reinforces that we've just done wrong, and we feel guilty about it. And then the guilt then becomes a reason for religion, because religion thrives on making us feel guilty. So long as we feel guilty, or like we think there's something wrong with us or something wrong with society, then it just reinforces like you need what we have what we're offering. Jesus, forgiveness, or Allah loves you and forgives you anyway. So on the one hand, we learn that wrong is wrong because of the pain that we caused, or we notice. And then all of a sudden, because of that pain, religion jumps on it and says, now we need us, So they need pain, they need suffering, they need guilt.
In fact, I think there's a correlation, if I'm not mistaken, between how miserable a population is.
There is.
And its religiosity.
There is. Poverty, hunger. The more that is in a country or a territory, then the more people believe in God, and the less of it there is, then the less people believe in God. Norway and Denmark and other countries, they're largely atheist country, and they have taken care of their needs. They have higher societal health factors. The South, of course, in America, have the low factors, and there's a high belief in God there because of it.
Hey, maybe this will get some folks to call in. Again, you guys, you can call us anytime between 7 and 8 p.m. Our number is 260-422-3902. We'd love to hear from you guys. I'm hoping this next little bit might spark somebody to call in. Abortion. Maybe we can spark some interest
that
here.
Will get everybody calling. We know this. We should have a segment every time we do this, and where we talk about abortion.
And if that
doesn't,
or how about this? How about a general rule of thumb? General rule of thumb, because I have a feeling that you're
when
right on
there's a
this.
lull in the action, mention abortion.
Exactly, let me just add this as well. How about just one call or question on abortion a day? Are we good with that as a general rule of thumb?
I'll give me a second. I'll call my older brother and I'll have him call in, or something. Yeah. Count on him.
In fact, we can skip that altogether. I actually kind of want to talk about a conversation that I had earlier today, which I think is kind of relevant to some of the things that we kind of tie some threads. Bear with me. I was having a conversation with a coworker today, and somehow, I have no idea what had happened, but we started talking about homosexuality. And he kept bringing up the sort of language. He would say something like, it's against our nature, to have sex if it's not going to be to procreate, that's what sex is for. And immediately I asked him, I said, well, I'm just going to ask, and I don't mean to be rude, but are you Catholic? And he said, well, yeah, I am. And I said, well, look, I'm just going to level with you. I don't think this is a work conversation, but I'm willing to have this with you. But I just don't think that we're going to find a middle ground here. Sure enough, 30 minutes later, we'd covered the whole spectrum that I could think of to talk about. And it's still, no matter how many times you rebut the fact that it isn't against nature, even if that is his case, if that's the angle he wants to approach this from, even if it is against, or it's just not against nature. There's just so many ways that we can prove this to be the case demonstrably. But anyway, that aside, I'm told that we do, in fact, have a phone call. We're getting that call queued up as we speak, so it'll just be a moment.
Yeah, it's against nature is a Catholic argument because they don't have the authority of the written word as foremost in their religion. They have the Pope and the bishops, and they also have natural law. Natural law, of course, is there's a law in nature that if we just figured it out, we could find our ethics in. And so the natural law argument goes right into the homosexual idea because it's not natural. But so there's so many things that are not natural. I mean, get used to it, okay? When's the last time you had surgery? You know, did you have a tooth extracted? That's not natural. Do you grow hair under here? Well, that's not natural to shave it. Who said it was? I mean, you know, we come up with, how about a bra? That's not natural to have it in a bra. But no, they have the idea about what's natural and what's not, and whatever they decide is natural, which is including all those sorts of things. No surgery, of course, no pills, no prescriptions, you know, nothing. That's not natural. Then why don't we do away with all? Be consistent here or not. And they're not going to be consistent, apparently.
All right. Well, I guess thank you for that. We'll continue that in a moment because actually the one thing that I really wanted to focus on was just his sheer use of language. The way that he was saying it. There are obvious distinctions between Protestantism and Catholicism, and he was actually really shocked because one of his I'm sorry. Oh, we'll get to that in a minute. To be continued. We have Adam on the line. Sorry to keep you waiting, Adam. What's your question today?
I don't really have a question. A friend of mine just sent me the link via Twitter. You guys were asking for callers, so I figured I would call in. I tried to call into the Atheist Experience on Sunday, but I didn't get through, and it looked like you guys were just trying to put a show together. So I'm actually a YouTuber. I have a channel. Friended Forever is my YouTube channel. So some videos that are, I guess you would call me a pro-religion atheist. So I've been studying a lot of Jordan Peterson stuff, and I find it interesting. So,
you know, we were just talking about Jordan Peterson today. I don't mean to cut you off, but I have a feeling I know where you're going with this.
Well, I'm not trying to trap you or anything.
No, I'm not saying that I feel trapped. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Let's see where this goes.
Well, you guys. I mean, I didn't really call in with any kind of specific question or anything. I mean, I'm interested. I watched a debate with Matt Dillahunty and another Christian recently. I think, like a lot of people, are a lot of people on our side of the debate. And when I say our side of the debate, I'm thinking the atheist debate. One of the things that separates me from most atheists, and I don't know if you guys are technically atheists or anti-theists. I do see like a rift in the atheist community there, where some people are delineating themselves as being anti-religious.
Can I pause you there real quick? And I'll
go ahead
and clear up that distinction. By definition, yes, I am an atheist. Am I an anti-theist, which would be somebody who is specifically opposed to religion in all its forms and glory? I would, as it stands, I honestly think I would label myself as an anti-theist because I feel that, on the whole, religion does cause a greater harm for humanity. I think that we would be light years ahead of where we are. This is speculation, but I think that we would be light years ahead of where we are if religion hadn't ever come into the field of ideas. But that's...
The thing about religion is that, at least in the past, with a religion, you had a voice for religion. Religion just doesn't come down on us. There's a spokesman. Who's claiming responsibility, for instance, for this earthquake? Well, a priest or shaman or a prophet will say, "My God is." You always have a spokesman because the God never speaks to us himself. So what happens with religion is you have a spokesman, and when you have a spokesman, you have authority. And when you have authority, you have all kinds of other things that go with that to keep us or them in the fold. So religion has divided us. Religion has caused a great deal of harm because religion has been used in the past and even today to sequester us from other groups. And then when we're in different tribes, we go to war. And we have different clothing, we do different things that the authorities of that religion say we should do, which imbibes on human freedom.
And quickly, before I let you continue, Adam, I just wanted to also mention that one of the other reasons why I am opposed to religion is that it tends to instigate supernatural thinking. And Jordan Peterson is no exception here. In fact, we had just got done having a conversation about Jordan Peterson's debate, or conversation really, with Matt Dillahunty. Mm-hmm. Now, Jordan Peterson actually espouses that it is impossible to do something like quit smoking unless you believe in a deity or a god, even if it's on a subconscious level. His claim is that atheists can't quit smoking, for example. You need some sort of.
I hate to cut you off, but
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
In the debate, he actually says that there's an 80% chance of quitting if you have a supernatural experience. And I actually made a video where I pulled out the research that he's talking about that from. I know that Matt Dillahunty has made several videos saying, like, implying that he said it was 100%, but he didn't. He clearly says in the debate an 80% chance. So, I mean, that's just a misrepresentation of his foreman. And I mean, those
not
studies
at all.
have been
See,
done.
what's going on there? Okay. See, the issue that you're describing is that these people say that they have this religious experience, and that motivates them to quit smoking, or that they use their religion as a sort of crutch to help them along. Now, I'm not necessarily denying the fact that that might be the case, that 80% of people.
These studies, just to let people know, the studies are in the book The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. So.
I'm sorry? I didn't hear.
Well, just to let people know, I don't want people to think that I'm just pulling these studies, out of nowhere. The studies are cited by Jonathan Haidt in the book The Righteous Mind. The religious experience studies that Peterson cites in the Matt Dillahunty debate.
Sure. But let's just say for a moment that a belief in the supernatural does help you to quit smoking. Okay? Mm-hmm. But let's say that same belief leads you down the path of Christianity. What percentage, well, I'm not going to ask you that, but I would go ahead and venture to guess that the vast majority of people who are anti-homosexual, for example, are religious. Okay? So even if, again, when I had said why I'm anti-theist is because on the whole, I'm not saying that there aren't little things here and there that religion might be able to help a person motivate themselves to do. This is a placebo effect at best. But
yeah, placebo. Yeah, that's placebos work. We know this. It's no surprise. It's not strange thinking to think that is what can account for that.
Yeah, and this. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I quit smoking 3.5 years ago, and I guess you can say, okay, John was somehow, influenced by a deity. I mean, this is the kind of crazy stuff that people say who are ignorant. I wasn't privy to the whole. I wasn't privy to the discussion as to whether or not he said this or he said that. I'm just being acquainted of it right now. But it's crazy to be able to make that suggestion without a scientific poll on it. And even a scientific poll can be misrepresented here on this particular issue because not everybody smokes. You don't have to have everybody smokes first, and then do that to find out what. And even though people might credit a god or a deity with the help, that we already know that's not to be relied on either. I mean, they credit the warmth of the day or a parking spot. Oh, God, thank you for this parking spot. So we can't even accept that. It'd have to be a lot more in detail, even though I'm not sure exactly what was said or wasn't said. But I'm going to tell you this. Maybe you should try again to call back at Matt Dillahunty's show, because you want to air your dirty laundry with him on us.
I only brought it up because you guys, you had mentioned the quit smoking thing, and I just wanted to clear the record on that. I mean, he's citing a scientific study, and like the atheism I grew up with was like, the ultimate authority is the evidence. I mean, we all claim to be empiricists, so it's necessary.
Well, look, this 80 percentile thing, it's really, in the grand scheme, it's really neither here nor there. It's for the most part, it's anecdotal. I mean, because what you're talking about specifically is with smoking. Whether or not religiosity might help you quit smoking it's irrelevant as to whether or not the religion or the belief itself is true, which is really what I'm personally concerned with.
No, I agree.
But then you also have the complete opposite with alcoholism, for example. I mean, in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's part of the curriculum to find a higher power.
So tell me again, what's your name?
Adam.
Adam what?
My YouTube channel is Friended Forever. I do YouTube videos. I've done a couple of videos on the work of David Sloan Wilson, who is another scientist, evolutionary biologist. I don't know if he's an evolutionary biologist or anthropologist who's studying religion from a scientific perspective. I'm a student of Jonathan Haidt. I've done some videos for Jonathan Haidt. So.
Good for you. And if you find that atheists are misrepresenting studies, as I just heard you say, and you can document that, then fine on you. I have no beef with scientific studies. I like I said, I just came upon this debate today. But thank you so much for calling. Appreciate that.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for calling in anytime. Okay. Well, anyway, you know what I was getting at those with the Alcoholics Anonymous thing. I mean, it's well known that it's part of the curriculum to find a higher power or to at least look in that direction. But the secular AA projects that I've looked into, it's been a while since I looked into these figures, but they are actually slightly better. Not drastically, but we're talking on the order of like at most 10%, but at least if you want to quote statistics on whether or not secularism versus some sort of religious alternative in your therapy is going to help you more, I think that the debate's still open on that. Is kind of what I'm getting at. But by and large, if Jordan Peterson didn't say that it's impossible to quit without some sort of supernatural experience, I'm sorry if I misquoted him on that. But to even hint at that is kind of silly in my mind. I mean, to even suggest that hey, you're better off being religious because it might help you quit smoking is ridiculous.
Well, I would have to look at apparently there's a scientific study. I'd have to look at the scientific study and see what correlation or causation came first, and so I'm not decided on it until I look at it myself.
All right. Well, we have another caller on the line. We'd be happy to take your call. You are speaking with We Are Atheists, Caleb and John. Do we have you queued up yet? All right. Well, our camera lady here is kind of jumping the gun a bit. Sorry about this, guys. Just give us one moment.
Okay.
Getting that queued up. Hello. How you doing? What's your name?
Hi, I'm good.
What's your name?
Wiley.
Wiley. Well, thank you for calling, Wiley. What's your question or comment today?
Well, first, my simple comment is I just want to thank John for his book, Why I Became an Atheist. That was the first atheist book I read. And basically, it changed my life and was very beneficial for me. So I just want to thank him for that.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
it's a sort of an encyclopedia of sorts.
Yeah,
I put it all into it.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't put it down. It was great. So.
All right, Wiley. Well, did you have a question as well?
Yeah. So, concerning the outsider test for faith. So I've been an atheist for a little over 2 years, and the former independent fundamental Baptist crowd that I used to belong to, sometimes I'm in contact with them, and we'll text or we'll have a phone conversation. I'll bring up the outsider test for faith, and to me that was such an impactful thing, the outsider test for faith. But when I present it to them, they just dismiss it right off as if, oh, that's stupid. The Muslims are wrong and all these other religions are wrong. I mean, it's obvious. I'm like, but what if you were born in their culture? You would probably believe their faith. And it just seems to go right over their heads. And so I was just basically wondering if you could, I thought it would be interesting to hear you recap, maybe for other viewers, what the outsider test for faith is, and what do you have to say about that when people just completely ignore that?
Thanks for calling. I appreciate a question about something I've written. That way I can comment intelligently. I hope I do that now. too.
Yeah.
I've written and edited about 10 books, and that's the one book, that's the one issue that I'm focused on. The outsider test for faith. Since child indoctrination takes place among believers, especially believers who accept hellfire and brimstone, your children are going to go to hell if they don't believe, then they force religion down their down their throats. And I argue that these children, everybody, in fact, should reevaluate the faith they were taught upon becoming an adult. And I think that they should do so as a rite of passage. You're not a fully informed adult until you reevaluate your religion. I do that because we don't know who's been indoctrinated. I mean, children don't arrive at the age of 20 and all of a sudden say, you know what, I've been indoctrinated to believe. No, they don't think that. They think they were not indoctrinated. They think everybody else was indoctrinated. So I say that even if you think you're not indoctrinated, you should, evaluate your faith all over again, just as if you're an outsider. And an outsider is simply someone who was not raised. As much as possible, treat your own faith as if you're new to it. And how do you do that? Well, you just look at the other faiths that you reject, like, say, Islam or Scientology or the Orthodox Judaism or Hinduism. Study those faiths up a little bit and look at the practitioners and the adherents, and do they believe, with certainty or near certainty that their religion is true? Well, they do. Well, do they claim miracles? Well, they do. Do they claim answers to prayers? Well, they do. And so are they as sure that Allah exists as you are that God exists? Well, yeah. Well, so it's about time then that you take a look at why you believe, then, since you don't believe their miracles, since you don't believe their prayer requests that were answered, and look at your own faith as an outsider would. Now, here's how an outsider would think of the Christian faith. There's this second person of the Trinity. Now, nobody else has a trinity of gods, deities. That's all of a sudden, somebody patched somebody in. I mean, if you got three deities, somebody somewhere patched a couple of them in there, because otherwise, usually you can only think of one deity, but we're going to patch a couple in there and call it a trinity. So that's already prima facie something's going on there. So you have to ask yourself, now, the second person of the Trinity impregnated a virgin and became birthed through her as an incarnate Son of God. That's just ridiculous on its own merit. You would think that. That's how everybody else thinks of it. So you would ask yourself, now, what actual evidence is there that took place? Well, it says so in the Bible. Well, it says this in the Quran. Do you believe every sacred book that's there? Well, no. You question it. You say, where's the evidence? Now, what kind of evidence could actually show that there's this second person of the Trinity that was birthed, as a God-man? Well, except for a few sentences here or there, or a few missed prophecies that don't actually say what they claim to say, then you really don't have evidence for that. You just don't have it. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but you just don't have any evidence for that thing happening. Now, what would it take to be a reasonable adult? Someone who would require evidence. So prima facie, there's no reason to believe that story. None. An adult wouldn't accept it. Not here, not there, not anywhere. Now, I'm sorry it didn't have to turn out that way. I get faulted for the outsider test because apparently it undermines religion. Well, I'm so sorry about that. If there were actual evidence for it, then it wouldn't. In fact, yeah, I can hear you, are you amening back there? Because that really feels good. I feel like I'm preaching here. But, you just have to treat your own religion as if you were an outsider to it, and it fails. My argument, of course, based on that, is that religions fail miserably. You want to add to that? Or?
Well, I think you nailed it on that. I mean, it's your book. And
I'll
say this.
Everybody has a comment on it.
My comment isn't necessarily related to your thesis or anything. I just want to say how prevalent your book is. I'm an adamant follower of several different atheist groups, organizations, people, etc. And I am amazed I shouldn't be, but I'm
amazed at you.
Quite amazed at how often the outsider test for faith comes up in conversation and dialogue, how John Loftus's name comes up in conversation all the time. His outsider test for faith is a really down-to-earth way to get people to rationalize just how silly some of their beliefs are. I mean, the Trinity is a great example of that.
But he also asked me, what do I do when believers scoff at the idea? I think I didn't mention that. Well, get used to it. They have to. They have to. You'd be surprised how strongly entrenched belief is into their brains. They simply cannot treat their faith as an outsider. Now, some do, like you, and most people who reject their religion do so as outsiders. But it's going to happen, and you just simply hammer it home, what you said, and they're either going to accept it or they're not. They're either going to think about it later or they're not. But at least you can plant seeds. How's that sound?
Yeah, that sounds great, and I guess I knew that too, but it's so weird to think that they're that entrenched in their belief that they can't.
It's evidence all by itself that they should re-examine their faith. Why? Because something so simple and yet so important and so easily defended, like the outsider test for faith, is rejected by them. Well,
right.
That it all in and of itself should be cause for them to think, hey, you know what? Maybe I am indoctrinated. Maybe I do need to take the outsider test for faith.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your phone call. We are actually running short on time. I'm seeing somebody holding up the 1-minute banner now, or excuse me, the 3-minute banner now. Excuse me, just enough time to go ahead and throw this out there. We're going to discuss this more on our next episode, which, by the way, will hopefully be on Thursday, not this Thursday, the following Thursday, which I believe is the 19th, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, not this Thursday, next Thursday. We will be live on Facebook. We will not be live on our cable networks, unfortunately. But I wanted to take the last couple of minutes here to discuss some protests that are going to be going on at the Ark Encounter this year. This is an annual event. In fact, John Loftus was a guest speaker for last year's protests. This year, the Ark Encounter protests will be on July 7th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. There's going to be a lot of people there, a lot of events going on. I mean, you have Seth Andrews from the Thinking Atheists, Aaron Ra, Kelly Helton, and on and on and on. There's a lot of speakers, and again, if you want more information, you can check out Tri-State Free Thinkers Facebook page. They have several links and resources available to find this information. But I'm actually thinking I'm going to be there this year myself. It just so happens to be occurring while I'm going to be on shutdown at work. I'm not going to be working. So I actually think I might make the trip this year. I've never had the opportunity to do that. What was it like last year? Quick, I mean, we only have a minute or so.
We did a little march. We did a little dance. We did a little song. No, we did some of that. And we had some really good speakers. Hemant Mehta did. He gave a nice little talk about the tax dollars that went into that Ark experience and how miserably the attendance is and things like that. And we did a little march up and down, and it was interesting. Somebody from security from the Ark Encounter had a drone, a big drone. I mean, not just a tiny one, big drone hovering over us to get some kind of film footage of us. And so we all waved, and I don't know what they were expecting. Maybe we were going to storm them or something like that. So make sure you get on that footage. But it was a delightful time to meet people and to protest something of tax dollars going to support something so idiotic as a worldwide flood that has no evidence for it. But I encourage you to go, and I might even consider going again today or this time around. So,
all right. Well, guys, we are down to our last 60 seconds. Before we go, I just wanted to say one last time that you can email your questions for future shows to WeAreAtheistsTV@gmail.com. WeAreAtheistsTV@gmail.com. Also, I've set up a Discord service. You can find the information to that on our Facebook page. You can search for We Are Atheists and find the Discord information. On our Discord, you'll have the capacity to submit Showtime questions as well, but that's also a platform to allow you guys to intermingle with the We Are Atheist community, maybe have some debates of your own. There's a lot that's going to be available, and in the future I plan on implementing a VIP access for people who want to talk to the cast and crew for special events, things of that nature. Alrighty, guys. Well, on that note, I just want to thank everybody behind the screens and you, John, and all our callers. We really appreciate it. We are atheists, and we'll see you next time.